Marcus Harlow and Vanessa Green seemed like the perfect couple, successful, admired, and untouchable, but behind closed doors, a bitter breakup, mounting greed, and a shocking betrayal would turn their lives into a real-life nightmare, culminating in a murder-for-hire plot that would rock the nation. Dr. Marcus Harlow's life was the kind of life most people could only dream of. A respected physician with a thriving medical practice, he had built a career that not only brought him wealth but also admiration from his colleagues and patients alike. His days were carefully balanced between hospital rounds, consultations, and speaking engagements, yet somehow Marcus always seemed to have time for the finer things in life. From luxury cars to a mansion perched on a quiet hill, every detail of his existence suggested success, control, and perfection. Social media only reinforced the image. Photos of elegant dinners, vacations in exotic locations, and high-profile charity events made it clear to anyone scrolling through that Marcus's life was enviable. To the public, there was no hint of trouble, no shadow of conflict. It was the kind of life that seemed untouchable. Those closest to Marcus knew, however, that perfection was often just a mask. Behind the polished exterior lay complexities that few could see. Maintaining such a life required effort, careful planning, and a network of relationships that could both support and complicate it. Friends and acquaintances often described him as charming, intelligent, and disciplined, but also distant at times, guarded about his personal life. Despite all appearances, Marcus's private world was more fragile than anyone could imagine, vulnerable to pressures that wealth and prestige alone could not protect against. The first crack in this carefully constructed image came in a way that no one could have predicted. Vanessa Green, Marcus's ex-girlfriend, had once been an integral part of his life. Their relationship had seemed like a storybook romance at the time. They were often seen together at events, enjoying vacations, and celebrating milestones in each other's lives. But the end of their relationship had been far from amicable. Friends recalled tense conversations, subtle arguments, and an unmistakable shift in Vanessa's demeanor after the breakup. What had once been admiration and love gradually turned into something darker, something that lingered beneath the surface. The story took a shocking turn when Vanessa's name appeared in a lawsuit that made headlines almost overnight. The accusation was as explosive as it was surreal. She was alleged to have plotted a murder-for-hire scheme targeting Marcus himself. The claim suggested that she had approached someone with the intent to cause him harm, allegedly motivated by greed and resentment. The lawsuit described financial struggles and a series of choices that hinted at a motive rooted not just in personal anger, but in a desire for wealth and security at Marcus's expense. The news sent shockwaves through Marcus's social circle and the wider public. People struggled to reconcile the image of Vanessa, the person who had once shared intimate moments with Marcus, with the idea that she could orchestrate a plan so dangerous. Media outlets and social media users alike speculated endlessly about her motives, her methods, and the plausibility of such a plot. Meanwhile, Marcus, who had long maintained a private life despite his public persona, found himself at the center of scrutiny and concern. What had seemed like a perfect life was suddenly under threat, and the cracks that had always existed were now exposed in the most dramatic and terrifying way imaginable. The revelation of the lawsuit marked the beginning of a story that would captivate the nation. As the details slowly emerged, it became clear that this was not just a case of personal vendetta, but a complex web of ambition, jealousy, and calculated risk. The life Marcus had carefully built was suddenly entwined with danger, forcing him and everyone around him to confront a reality that none of them could have foreseen. The calm exterior of his world was shattered, and the public began to realize that behind every polished image there could be secrets capable of changing everything. Marcus and Vanessa's relationship had started like many others, filled with excitement, shared plans, and a sense of connection that seemed unbreakable at the time. They met through mutual friends at a charity event, a glamorous setting that suited both of their social ambitions. From the start, Vanessa appeared to complement Marcus's life perfectly. She was elegant, charming, and socially adept, qualities that made her presence almost magnetic in the circles Marcus frequented. At first, their relationship seemed like a match made in the public eye to successful individuals whose combined lifestyles reinforced the image of success and sophistication. For several years, they moved through life together in a rhythm that seemed enviable. Friends recalled vacations in exotic locations, evenings spent at high-end restaurants, and a shared network of influential contacts. It was a partnership that appeared seamless, a blend of personal affection and public admiration. But beneath the surface, tension was quietly building. Marcus, absorbed in his career and social obligations, often neglected the emotional aspects of their relationship. Vanessa, ambitious and accustomed to a certain standard of living, grew increasingly frustrated with what she perceived as Marcus's detachment. Small disagreements that might have been inconsequential in other relationships began to accumulate, and what started as minor frustrations gradually hardened into resentment. The breakup, when it finally happened, was sudden and jarring for those who knew them. Vanessa had been growing dissatisfied with the dynamics of their relationship, feeling undervalued and overlooked. She began to express her dissatisfaction through subtle hints and increasingly pointed comments, a way of signaling her discontent without directly confronting Marcus. But when the decision was made to part ways, the separation was more than just emotional. It carried financial implications and a sense of betrayal that neither of them could ignore. For Vanessa, the end of the relationship represented more than the loss of a partner. It marked a disruption to the life she had envisioned, one intertwined with comfort, status, and security. As the lawsuit later revealed, Vanessa's motives extended beyond heartbreak. Investigators pointed to her financial difficulties following the breakup as a potential catalyst for dangerous behavior. Bank statements and financial records suggested mounting debt and a desire to secure a larger share of wealth that Marcus had accumulated over the years. What began as resentment over a personal loss appeared to have evolved into a calculated consideration of what she could gain if Marcus were no longer in the picture. The combination of emotional frustration and financial incentive created a volatile mix, one that would set the stage for actions that shocked everyone who thought they knew her. Those close to Marcus began noticing subtle changes in his demeanor as well. He became more cautious, guarded in his conversations, and increasingly aware that something was amiss. The pleasant memories of their time together were overshadowed by a creeping sense of danger, a realization that the person he had once trusted and cared for might now pose a threat. The contrast between their past and the unfolding reality was stark, and it highlighted how quickly relationships built on admiration and affection could turn into arenas for suspicion, fear, and mistrust. As investigators pieced together the sequence of events, the story of their breakup painted a complex picture. It was a tale of love lost, of ambition clashing with loyalty, and of resentment transforming into something far more dangerous. The personal history between Marcus and Vanessa, once private and seemingly ordinary, now served as a critical lens through which the public could understand the shocking allegations that followed. What had started as a passionate relationship had ended in a storm of betrayal and greed, setting the stage for a plot that would capture the nation's attention. The first signs of something seriously wrong emerged in ways that at first seemed small, almost insignificant, but soon revealed a pattern that could not be ignored. Marcus began noticing unusual activity around his personal and professional life. Strange phone calls with no caller ID, emails with vague threats, and subtle surveillance outside his home created an unsettling atmosphere. Initially, he tried to dismiss it as paranoia, a result of the stress of his career and recent personal upheaval. But as the days passed, the incidents became more frequent and harder to explain. Friends who visited his home started commenting on unfamiliar cars parked nearby or people who seemed to be watching the property. The sense of safety that had always surrounded Marcus in his carefully managed life was evaporating. The investigation gained momentum when a close friend received an anonymous message warning of a dangerous plot. Authorities quickly traced the message and began digging into the trail of digital communications. Phone records, emails, and financial transactions painted a chilling picture. Someone had allegedly offered a substantial sum to hire a person to harm Marcus, a revelation that shocked both law enforcement and those who knew him personally. As investigators dug deeper, a web of connections emerged linking the suspicious activity directly to Vanessa. Evidence suggested that she had not acted impulsively but had carefully planned and executed steps to make the plot seem feasible. The degree of premeditation intensified the sense of danger and the stakes involved. Investigators discovered multiple layers of planning. Bank transfers showed unusual deposits and withdrawals, hinting at payments to third parties who could carry out the crime. Digital footprints revealed searches and communications that suggested a methodical approach. Vanessa's social media and online presence, previously just a record of everyday life, now became a repository of subtle clues. Every detail from her travel patterns to her contacts was scrutinized for connections that could indicate intent. The more the authorities uncovered, the clearer it became that this was not the act of someone merely angry or impulsive, but of someone with a calculated motive, a mix of emotional resentment and financial ambition. The narrative took an even darker turn as witnesses came forward. Individuals who had interacted with Vanessa during the alleged plotting period described unusual behavior, secretive meetings, and cryptic comments. Each testimony added to the growing image of a plan that had moved from imagination to execution. People who had once seen her as friendly and approachable now spoke of an intensity and focus that was unsettling. The contrast between her former persona and the emerging picture from the investigation made the story even more disturbing. As the public learned about the investigation, the story captured national attention. News reports highlighted the sophistication of the alleged plot, emphasizing that even those closest to Marcus could have posed a serious threat. The combination of personal betrayal and financial greed created a gripping narrative that kept viewers and readers on edge. The suspense built with each revelation, and the understanding that someone could so carefully orchestrate harm against a person they once claimed to love added a layer of shock and disbelief. By the time authorities had compiled the initial evidence, the scale of the alleged conspiracy was staggering. What had begun as subtle warning signs had expanded into a detailed investigation uncovering premeditated danger. Each discovery peeled back another layer of deception, showing how a seemingly ordinary conflict between ex-lovers could escalate into something chilling and dangerous. Marcus's life, once orderly and secure, now hung in a precarious balance as the full implications of betrayal and greed became impossible to ignore. The courtroom was tense from the very first day of proceedings, charged with a mix of anticipation, disbelief, and curiosity. Reporters crowded the halls, eager to witness a legal battle that had already captivated the nation. For Marcus, the experience was surreal, a stark contrast to the controlled and orderly life he had always led, sitting in the courtroom. He faced not only the woman he had once trusted deeply, but also a public audience ready to dissect every move, every piece of evidence, and every reaction. The trial promised to reveal secrets long hidden, and the world watched closely as the story of betrayal and greed unfolded in real time. From the beginning, the details that emerged were shocking. Witnesses described strange encounters and suspicious interactions that had occurred in the weeks leading up to the alleged plot. People testified about mysterious meetings Vanessa had arranged, unusual financial transactions, and conversations that hinted at a plan to deliberate to be dismissed as mere fantasy. Each revelation painted a picture of careful orchestration. What made the case particularly chilling was the combination of emotional motivation and financial incentive. The court heard how resentment from the breakup may have merged with greed, creating a dangerous and calculated determination to achieve her goals. Experts in digital forensics and financial analysis played a critical role in the proceedings. They traced communications across multiple platforms, examined banking records, and reconstructed timelines that suggested coordination with third parties. The courtroom became a place where abstract suspicion transformed into tangible evidence. Graphs, charts, and reports laid bare the intricacies of the alleged plot, showing the lengths to which someone might go when driven by a combination of anger and ambition. Each piece of evidence added weight to the narrative and heightened the tension in the room, leaving no doubt that this was a case with extraordinary stakes. The testimony of those who had observed Vanessa closely during the relevant period was particularly compelling. Their accounts revealed behaviors that were inconsistent with her previously public persona. Friends and acquaintances spoke of secretive meetings, cryptic messages, and unusual inquiries that raised red flags. Even seemingly minor actions took on new significance under scrutiny, creating a sense that the events had been quietly building towards something dangerous. The courtroom buzzed with the energy of these revelations, and for those following the trial, it became clear that the story was far more complex than simple betrayal or spite. Legal arguments added another layer of drama. Attorneys dissected every statement, every transaction, and every interaction, building cases for and against Vanessa. The public watched as evidence was debated, challenged, and contextualized, with each side presenting interpretations that could sway the outcome. The combination of meticulous investigation, detailed testimony, and courtroom strategy created a tense narrative, leaving viewers on edge with the uncertainty of how it would ultimately be resolved. By the end of the chapter of proceedings covered in public reports, the story had evolved from a shocking headline into a detailed, gripping account of human behavior under extraordinary circumstances. The courtroom exposed not only the alleged actions of Vanessa, but also the vulnerabilities and resilience of Marcus. It became clear that betrayal and greed could manifest in ways both subtle and dangerous, and that even the most carefully managed lives could be disrupted by calculated threats. The trial itself became a story of suspense, human complexity, and the unsettling reality of how personal motives could intersect with crime, leaving the audience captivated and eager to see what would unfold next. As the trial reached its final stages, the story took an even more complex turn. Evidence had painted a detailed and alarming picture of Vanessa's alleged involvement, but legal experts warned that proving intent beyond a reasonable doubt would be challenging. Loopholes in the law, inconsistencies in witness accounts, and the high standard required for conviction created a sense of unpredictability. For Marcus, the courtroom drama was far from over, and the public watched as each new day brought revelations, strategies, and unexpected developments that kept everyone on edge. One of the most startling elements to emerge was the depth of planning attributed to Vanessa. Investigators and experts had documented financial transactions, communications, and meetings that suggested she had taken deliberate steps over a period of time. The level of organization indicated a calculated approach, rather than a moment of impulsive anger. At the same time, defense attorneys highlighted gaps and ambiguities, emphasizing that suspicion alone could not equate to proof. This tension between evidence and interpretation became a central theme in the trial, leaving observers uncertain about what the final outcome might be. Public fascination only intensified as details continued to emerge. Media outlets dissected every development, analyzing motives, timelines, and personal histories. Commentators debated whether the alleged plot had been fully intended or whether it had been more of a psychological maneuver than a concrete plan. Social media exploded with speculation, with viewers discussing every nuance and offering theories about how the story might conclude. For Marcus, this meant living under constant scrutiny, knowing that even his most private actions were being examined through the lens of public curiosity and legal analysis. The human element of the story became even more pronounced as testimonies explored the emotional dynamics between Marcus and Vanessa. Experts in psychology and human behavior were called upon to explain how personal feelings like resentment, jealousy, and greed could combine to drive someone to extreme measures. The courtroom became a place where the complexities of human motivation were dissected and the public gained a deeper understanding of how emotions could escalate into dangerous behavior. It became clear that the case was not only about alleged criminal activity, but also about understanding the intricate ways in which personal relationships can influence actions. As the trial drew to a close, Marcus emerged with a sense of cautious relief. He had survived the threat, but the experience had left an indelible mark. The allegations, the evidence, and the public scrutiny had changed the way he viewed trust, relationships, and the fragility of personal security. Vanessa's motives, now exposed in painstaking details, served as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition and unresolved resentment. For the public, the case became more than a sensational story, it became a lesson in human behavior, the consequences of greed, and the unpredictable ways in which personal conflicts can escalate. The aftermath left lingering questions about justice, accountability, and the hidden aspects of people's lives. Even as legal proceedings concluded, the story continued to resonate, a cautionary tale of betrayal, ambition, and survival. Marcus's life, once carefully curated and seemingly untouchable, had been altered forever, and the nation had witnessed firsthand how perfect life could be threatened by the most unexpected and intimate forms of danger. The case remained a chilling reminder that beneath every surface of success and charm, secrets and motives can exist that no one could have anticipated, leaving audiences both captivated and unsettled by the fragile line between trust and betrayal.